video and express vengeance toward anyone. I love everyone, and that includes the caller last Thursday. God bless you, sir. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you. 222-9224.
United States of America. And I would give my blood and my heart and my soul to protect it. And anybody that wouldn't do that, I think they ought to pack their bags and leave. If communism is so great, go live in Russia. Go live in Cuba. Go live anywhere. You are not made to live in the United States of America. So pack up and go. But a lot of your callers, especially some of the big mouths from this morning, the biggest thing they believe in is being generals of the thought police army. They think you ought to have any kind of rights on what you want to think about. And that's why you're always being criticized by them, because you're a free thinker and you're a free talker. And me and you have had dozens of conversations about different things. Sometimes you've made points with me, and sometimes I've made points with you. But I never have told you you can't think that way. And I've never told you that your thoughts are wrong and that you're preaching hate and that you're just, you don't know what you're talking about. I've never said that to you, because there's always truth behind what you're saying. And these other people, they're generals, they're admirals, they're whatever they think they are. They want to control what you think and what you say. And by the Constitution of the United States of America, they can't make you think their way. And that's the First Amendment. And you know what? By the Second Amendment, that protects my rights of free speech and my rights of free assembly. People don't need to ever forget that. The right to keep and bear arms, it's like the Supreme Court Justice said, it's not a small amendment. It's the Second Amendment. The right to carry, the right to defend yourself, the right to keep these people that would stop you from being able to talk and think freely. Because I was watching the news just a few minutes ago, and one of these socialist, communist, crazy people, the one that shot Charlie Kirk through the throat, he's sitting there and they're showing the bullet hitting the man and taking his life from him. And the poor wife, her and her whole family's in there, they all had to get up and leave the courtroom. But that's what these people that are the thought police would do to all of us, to keep us from telling the truth, to keep us informing people that really don't know. And I thank the people that formed this country. And my ancestors fought in 1776, and we shot the heck out of a bunch
of American Indians. A bunch of black people. Y'all killed them.
We were the revolutionaries.
To take over.
But it formed the greatest nation in the world. The absolute
According
greatest.
to you.
Nobody, no country in the world has a standard of living as high as we do. And that's mainly because...
That's because black people built the country, and they built it really well for y'all white-ass folks.
And I not only got on my soapbox, I got on a ladder on top of my soapbox.
All right. So, appreciate it.
Hey, God bless you, Harry, for carrying the torch of freedom as far as you do. And these fools that Want to take that torch out of your hand? Well, I got a place you can put that torch, and I'll help you put it there.
All right. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, they want to kill the real truth for their truth, but they're not going to do that because the Most High God is in control. We're in the age of Aquarius where the real truth is coming out, and they can take their white truth and stick it up their goddamn ass. They some sorry ass people. I mean, they are evil as hell and sorry as hell. Gonna kill a person for telling the real truth because their lies of thousands of years is fading and falling. The fall of America because of goddamn lies. You know, the Westerners taught us so many lies. They taught us backwards. That's what they did. They taught us backwards. They wanted to take our place. They knew they were the devil's children, but they wanted to make us the devil's children and them God's people. But that's not how it really is. It has nothing to do with the race or color of your skin. It all begins with the content of your heart. How do you treat other people? What do you think about? Are you in alignment? Are you in proper alignment with the Most High or the universe? Look at yourself in the mirror and ask yourself these questions. Do you carry the fruit of the Spirit? Or do you go around doing black magic on people, trying to cause them harm in the name of Jesus? Good morning. Welcome to Gnostic 5 Senses Knowledge, Kings and Queens Entertainment Education.
Never underestimate the chaos a confident fool can create. And yet, here we are, watching an entire group implode because they mistook insanity for inspiration. It's almost poetic, if it weren't so pitiful. You'd think by now people would learn to read the warning label before drinking the Kool-Aid, but no, they lined up for refills, smiling, chanting, and calling it vision. Here's a fact. According to behavioral psychologists, people are more likely to follow someone wrong with confidence than someone right with hesitation. That's not just scary, that's tragic comedy. Because in this story, the so-called leader didn't need intelligence, he just needed volume. And the crowd, they mistook his delusion for destiny. Now the smoke has cleared, the lies are exposed, and the faithful followers are enraged. Not because they were deceived, but because they can't believe they were that gullible. They built the pedestal, crowned the lunatic, and now they're furious that the throne turned out to be a collapsing stool. What you're about to see isn't just a downfall. It's a masterclass in human psychology, pride, and blind allegiance. This is what happens when logic takes a vacation and ego drives the bus straight off the cliff, with everyone cheering from the back seat. Let's talk about it. Number one, they didn't follow the lunatic because he was wise. They followed him because he was loud. That's the sad truth about how people operate in groups. Volume beats value every single time. When someone speaks with confidence, even when what they're saying is nonsense, the crowd leans in. It's as if humans are programmed to equate noise with knowledge. The louder the voice, the more believable it sounds. It's not leadership they're drawn to. It's the illusion of certainty. And in a world full of people terrified of thinking for themselves, certainty sells faster than truth ever could. The lunatic didn't need logic. He had charisma, chaos, and conviction. That's all it takes. He shouted what they were too afraid to whisper, and they took that as a sign of courage. But courage isn't about being loud. It's about being right when no one's clapping. Still, to those followers, his madness felt magnetic because it gave them something to hide behind. If he sounded sure, then they didn't have to be. His voice became their compass, even though he had no sense of direction. There's something deeply human about wanting to be led. It feels safe. It takes the weight off your shoulders. Thinking critically requires effort. Following doesn't. The group didn't want a leader, they wanted an escape from responsibility. And that's how they ended up mistaking arrogance for authority. They mistook passion for purpose, chaos for confidence, and manipulation for motivation. When someone makes noise, it drowns out your inner voice. That's why they stopped hearing their own doubts long before they fell apart. Now they're angry, but their anger is misplaced. They say, "He fooled us." But the truth is, they fooled themselves. They wanted someone to make the world simple again, someone who'd scream answers so loudly that it silenced their uncertainty. They traded common sense for a comforting lie wrapped in charisma. And now they can't stand the reflection of their own gullibility. This is how groups destroy themselves, not through lies alone, but through their hunger for a leader who sounds sure when they themselves are unsure. The lunatic didn't win because he was strong. He won because they were desperate to be told what to believe. Number 2, collective stupidity isn't an accident, it's a comfort zone. People like to think they're independent thinkers until it's time to stand alone. Then suddenly, the crowd starts looking safe. When you're unsure, confused, or scared, blending in feels better than being right. That's how whole groups end up walking off cliffs together, not because they're blind, but because it's easier than facing the truth alone. It's a strange kind of safety. Everyone's wrong, but at least they're wrong together. The group that followed the lunatic wasn't tricked. They were tired of uncertainty, tired of thinking, tired of accountability. Following him wasn't about belief, it was about relief. As long as he sounded confident, they didn't have to question anything. He gave them permission to switch off their minds, and they loved him for it. There's a certain comfort in surrendering your judgment to someone else. You don't have to wrestle with decisions, you just nod and obey. It's lazy faith, and it feels good until the crash comes. They didn't just lose because he was wrong, they lost because they refused to think. When the lies started piling up, they ignored them. When reality started knocking, they turned up the noise to drown it out. They called it loyalty, but it was fear of isolation. They thought standing with the group meant strength, but it was just shared weakness disguised as unity. Each one of them could have walked away, but no one wanted to be the first. And when everyone's scared to step out, stupidity becomes a team sport. What makes this so tragic is how familiar it is. People don't realize how often they choose comfort over clarity. The truth is, thinking hurts. It exposes your ignorance, challenges your ego, and separates you from the crowd. But the group didn't want that pain. They wanted the easy version of truth, the one that came with a cheering section. So they followed, eyes open but hearts shut. When it all fell apart, they blamed him. But deep down, they knew the truth. No one forced them to follow. They joined the parade willingly because belonging felt better than being right. That's the danger of collective stupidity. It's not forced, it's chosen. Number 3, the lunatic wasn't their master, he was their mirror. That's the part they'll never admit. They followed him because he reflected back everything they secretly were. Impulsive, insecure, ego-driven, and hungry for validation. He didn't hypnotize them with brilliance. He echoed their chaos with confidence. Deep down, they recognized themselves in his recklessness, and instead of correcting it, they celebrated it. His madness felt familiar, and familiarity breeds loyalty. They called him bold, but he was just unfiltered. He spoke without thinking, and they admired that, because they too were tired of pretending to be rational. He made them feel free to be careless, unaccountable, and loud. When he mocked wisdom, they laughed, not because it was funny, but because they finally had permission to laugh at the things they secretly feared. He became their mascot, their emotional outlet, their permission slip to stop growing. That's why they followed so easily. It wasn't leadership, it was emotional projection. People don't just follow what they admire, they follow what justifies them. The lunatic's insanity gave them a way to hide from their own shortcomings. His delusions made their own seem normal. His lack of control made theirs feel harmless. He wasn't dragging them down. They were already on that level. He just made the descent feel purposeful. That's why they defended him so fiercely, even when the truth slapped them in the face. To admit he was lost would mean admitting they were too. The most painful part of this story is that they weren't tricked by a clever manipulator. They were seduced by their own reflection. The lunatic gave them identity when they had none. He made their flaws look like rebellion and their ignorance look like independence. They loved him because he made their dysfunction feel like destiny. And when everything fell apart, they didn't just lose a leader. They lost the illusion that their brokenness was beautiful. Now they call him crazy, but once upon a time he was their mirror, their comfort, their validation. They weren't following his vision. They were following themselves through him. The tragedy is not that he deceived them. It's that they found a part of themselves in his madness and mistook it for purpose. Number 4, they worshipped his delusion because it excused their cowardice. It's easy to hide behind someone else's madness when you lack the courage to face your own fears. He said the things they were too scared to voice, and that made him look fearless in their eyes. But it wasn't fearlessness. It was recklessness dressed as leadership. Still, to them, his wildness felt like freedom. It gave them cover to do what they'd never dare on their own. When he broke rules, they called it bold. When he attacked others, they called it truth-telling. Every wrong act became noble as long as it came from him. That's how delusion becomes worship. Not because people are deceived, but because they crave justification for their own weakness. He gave them permission to stop thinking. They could now act without guilt, follow without question, and sin without shame, all in the name of loyalty. His madness became their moral shield. If he failed, they'd say, "We were just following." That's the easiest way to escape accountability, to make obedience look like faith. The more irrational he became, the safer they felt, because as long as his delusion grew, theirs looked smaller by comparison. It's a twisted comfort when someone else's insanity makes yours look reasonable. This is why people love reckless leaders. They confuse chaos for courage. A person who speaks without filter appears strong, while a thoughtful one looks weak. So they rally behind the loudest voice, not the wisest. It's not admiration, it's avoidance. Following someone unhinged means you never have to face your own silence. You can point at him and say, "He's the brave one," while you hide behind the noise. But complicity has a price. When it all crumbles, the guilt doesn't disappear. It multiplies. Because deep down, they knew. They knew it wasn't bravery. It was madness. They knew it wasn't truth. It was ego on parade. And yet they went along because it felt safe to hide in his shadow. Now, they're left with nothing but the bitter taste of regret, realizing too late that worshiping his delusion didn't make them loyal. It made them cowards with excuses. Number 5, they didn't lose their minds. They sold them cheap. Every person, no matter how proud they act, has a price. For some, it's attention. For others, it's comfort. For many, it's the desperate need to belong somewhere, anywhere. The lunatic didn't have to trick them. He just made them an offer that appealed to their laziness. He said, "I'll do the thinking for you." And they agreed, relieved, even grateful. Thinking for yourself takes work. It takes courage, doubt, humility, and sometimes isolation. But following, that's easy. It's effortless obedience dressed as loyalty. They weren't robbed of their minds. They handed them over willingly in exchange for a sense of direction. His delusion gave them structure. His lies gave them purpose. In his presence, they didn't have to question anything. Not the world, not him, not themselves. And once they surrendered their critical thinking, they felt lighter, almost peaceful, like people who just dropped the weight of responsibility. But that peace was counterfeit. It wasn't peace of mind. It was the numbness of surrender. When people stop thinking, they start decaying. You could see it in their eyes, that dull glaze of compliance that forms when curiosity dies. They repeated his words without even understanding them, convinced that parroting madness made them wise. They became echoes instead of individuals, reflections instead of souls. And each time he made another absurd claim, they nodded harder, desperate to prove their loyalty to the very lie that enslaved them. They didn't realize they'd been bought cheap because the transaction felt good. He paid them in validation, told them they were chosen, enlightened, different from the rest. That's how manipulation works. It flatters before it feeds. They mistook flattery for truth and self-deception for faith. By the time they woke up, they weren't just broke in spirit. They were bankrupt in thought. Selling your mind doesn't happen all at once. It's a slow trade. One compromise today, one ignored doubt tomorrow, until your individuality disappears completely. They thought they'd found guidance, but what they found was dependence. The lunatic didn't steal their sanity. He simply convinced them it was overrated. And for that false sense of belonging, they gave away their greatest treasure, their ability to think. Number 6, their rage is just shame wearing a mask. On the surface, they look furious, shouting, blaming, pointing fingers. But underneath that noise sits something far more painful: humiliation. They're not truly mad at the lunatic. They're mad at themselves for falling for him, for clapping at lies, for defending what now makes them look foolish. The anger they throw at him is really an attempt to avoid looking in the mirror, because facing that reflection means admitting they weren't victims of manipulation. They were willing participants in their own undoing. Betrayal hurts, but what hurts more is realizing you helped it happen. They ignored the warning signs, silenced their doubts, and mocked anyone who tried to wake them up. Now that the truth has exploded, they're forced to deal with what they've become, accomplices in their own deception. That's why the anger burns so hot. It's not about justice. It's about trying to drown the sound of their own conscience. Rage is easier to perform than remorse. It feels powerful, but it's really guilt screaming through a megaphone. The hardest thing for a human being to do is admit they were foolish. Pride would rather rewrite history than face humility. So instead of saying, "I was wrong," they say, "He tricked me." It's a convenient rewrite, one that makes them seem innocent instead of gullible. But deep down, they know the truth. The lies only worked because they wanted them to. His madness validated their fear, their bitterness, their need to feel superior. And now that the mask has fallen, they're forced to face that ugly truth. They didn't follow him out of loyalty. They followed him out of ego. So they turn that shame outward and call it justice. They lash out, hoping to erase their own reflection in the flames of blame. But shame doesn't burn that easily. It lingers, it festers. And until they face it head on, they'll keep mistaking anger for healing. Because that's what rage really is in their case, a shield, not a sword. It protects them from the unbearable truth that they weren't deceived at all. They were willing, eager, and blind, and now they can't stand to look at the cost of their own cowardice. Number 7, the collapse wasn't sudden. It was built over time, brick by brick, through layers of ignored truth and quiet denial. They like to pretend it all happened out of nowhere, as if one shocking moment brought everything crashing down. But that's just another lie they tell themselves to escape accountability. The truth is, destruction never arrives unannounced. It creeps in slowly, disguised as compromise, comfort, or loyalty. Every downfall starts long before the explosion, in the tiny moments when people choose silence over honesty, convenience over courage, and comfort over conscience. It started when they overlooked the first red flag. They told themselves it wasn't a big deal. Then came another and another. They explained them all away until their entire moral landscape was covered in excuses. Each time they noticed something off, they silenced the inner voice that tried to warn them. At first it was guilt. Later it became apathy. They trained themselves to ignore their instincts so completely that by the time everything collapsed, they didn't even recognize the sound of truth anymore. What makes the fall so tragic is that it was completely predictable. You can't keep feeding on delusion and expect to stay whole. They normalized ignorance until it became their culture. Lies became jokes. Manipulation became strategy. And when someone dared to question it, they were labeled a traitor. The group's collective blindness wasn't accidental. It was enforced. They built an entire system around avoiding the truth. And that's how ignorance becomes an empire. One that looks powerful from the outside but is rotting from within. When it all finally fell apart, it wasn't the lunatics' madness that destroyed them. It was their consent. Every small surrender added up. Every time they chose to follow instead of think, a crack appeared in their foundation. By the time the final blow came, the structure was already hollow. Their conscience had been signing off on destruction for years. The collapse was just the receipt. Now they stand in the ruins, acting surprised, pretending it was sudden, but nothing about it was. The downfall was a slow decay, one decision at a time. They didn't trip. They eroded, and the saddest part is, they saw it happening and chose not to stop it. Number 8, they were never truly deceived. They were addicted to illusion. The lunatic didn't cast a spell, he simply served them what they were already craving. His lies weren't clever, they were comforting. And comfort for most people is far more seductive than truth. They didn't believe him because his words made sense. They believed him because those words made them feel something. Reality is often dull, demanding, and painfully honest. Illusion, on the other hand, is beautiful, easy, and forgiving. So they chose the lie again and again until they couldn't tell the difference anymore. The truth never disappeared. They just refused to look at it. They'd rather live inside a fantasy that flatters their ego than face a reality that exposes their blindness. That's what makes illusions addictive. They protect you from the discomfort of growth. His false promises gave them identity, purpose, and belonging. In his world, they weren't confused or lost. They were chosen, special, and enlightened. And that drug of false significance was too intoxicating to give up. They weren't following him. They were chasing the version of themselves they wished existed. Every lie he told was a reflection of their hidden desires. They didn't want truth. They wanted escape. They wanted to feel important without earning it, righteous without reflection, and informed without effort. The lunatic merely supplied the narrative. They supplied the need. It was a business built on emotional dependency. He sold delusion, and they bought it wholesale because it filled the emptiness truth never could. And even when the cracks began to show, when contradictions piled up and logic fell apart, they didn't walk away. Addicts don't abandon their fix just because it's poison. They cling tighter, hoping the next dose will make it all make sense. That's why the lie lasted so long, not because it was strong, but because they needed it to be. When the illusion finally shattered, they called it betrayal. But that's not what it was. It was exposure. The truth didn't fail them. It just arrived late. They weren't victims of deception. They were volunteers in delusion. Because for them, fantasy wasn't a mistake. It was home. Number 9. Mob mentality is just fear with an echo chamber. When people gather in a group, something strange happens. Their individuality starts to dissolve. The moment they see others believing the same nonsense, doubt feels like betrayal. So they silence their inner voice, not because it disappears, but because it no longer feels safe to listen to it. Alone, they might have questioned the lunatic. Together, they convinced each other he was right. It's not unity. It's shared panic disguised as purpose. Fear is contagious, and in a crowd, it multiplies like wildfire. One person's anxiety becomes everyone's gospel. The more frightened they feel, the more convinced they become that their fear must mean something true. That's how panic turns into ideology. Emotion replaces logic, and soon no one even remembers how to think independently. They stop asking, "Is this real?" and start chanting, "We can't all be wrong." That's the anthem of every deluded movement in history, mistaking numbers for truth. The lunatic didn't need to convince each of them individually. All he had to do was trigger their fear, then step back and let the echo chamber do the rest. They began repeating his madness to each other until it started sounding rational. Repetition became proof, and proof became loyalty. Once the group's identity depended on the lie, questioning it became unthinkable. To doubt him meant being cast out, and to be cast out meant facing the one thing they feared most, being alone with their own mind. So they reinforced each other's delusion. They found comfort in agreement, even when it was destroying them. They mistook the noise of many voices for the presence of truth. But there's nothing intelligent about collective panic. It amplifies emotion, not reason. The louder the crowd got, the dumber it became. By the end, their unity was nothing but synchronized fear, a shared hysteria they called faith. And when it all collapsed, they couldn't understand how it happened. But the answer was simple. They built their entire sense of truth on each other's terror. It wasn't unity that held them together. It was mutual confusion echoing in a closed room. And when the echoes finally stopped, all that was left was silence, and the emptiness of realizing they'd mistaken noise for wisdom. Number 10. The lunatic didn't need power. They handed it to him. That's the part no one wants to admit. It's easier to believe he manipulated them, tricked them, or forced them, than to face the truth that they gave it all away willingly. Power is almost never stolen. It's surrendered. He didn't take control. They offered it, gift-wrapped in fear and laziness. All he had to do was speak with conviction, and they rushed to obey, relieved that someone else could carry the burden of decision. They handed him their will because thinking for themselves felt too heavy. They handed him their judgment because questioning him meant standing alone. They handed him their voice because silence was safer than conflict. That's how tyranny starts. Not with force, but with consent. He became powerful because they preferred comfort over courage. Every time they said, "He knows best," a piece of their freedom disappeared. Every nod of agreement was another link in the chain. People love to talk about control as if it's always taken through aggression, but most control is gained through permission. The moment someone says, "Tell me what to do," they've already built their own prison. The lunatic didn't have to be intelligent or moral. He just had to be confident enough to fill the silence left by their cowardice. And once that silence was filled, it became impossible for them to remember how to think independently. The real tragedy isn't that he led them astray. It's that they wanted to be led. They mistook dependency for devotion, obedience for trust. He didn't enslave them. They enslaved themselves by choosing the illusion of safety over the responsibility of freedom. It's easier to follow a fool than to face the discomfort of uncertainty. And once they grew dependent on his direction, they started defending him. Not because they believed in him, but because they needed him. Without him, they'd have to think again, and that terrified them more than his madness ever did. By the time they realized what they'd done, it was too late. He wasn't holding them hostage. They were holding on to him. The lunatic didn't steal their power. He simply received what they were desperate to give away. Number 11. Their downfall was the price of ignoring the inner voice. Deep down, they knew something wasn't right. The gut always knows before the mind admits it. That quiet uneasiness that creeps in when something feels off. That was truth trying to save them. But instead of listening, they called it paranoia. Instead of trusting that instinct, they buried it under noise, loyalty, and denial. Every time their soul whispered, "This isn't right," obedience shouted louder. And the more they silenced that voice, the easier it became to betray themselves. They were taught to trust authority more than intuition. They were conditioned to believe that obedience was virtue, that following orders meant strength. So when the lunatic demanded loyalty, they didn't hesitate, even when everything in them screamed for caution. They confused submission with wisdom. They thought being loyal made them righteous, when in reality it made them blind. Every red flag that waved in front of them was dismissed as doubt, and doubt was treated like sin. That's how manipulation thrives, by convincing people that their instincts are wrong. Ignoring intuition is never harmless. It costs something, piece by piece. First you lose your sense of direction, then your confidence, then your identity. Soon you don't even know where your thoughts end and the groups begin. They thought silence kept them safe, but silence only protected their oppressor. The longer they ignored that quiet knowing inside, the louder the chaos outside became. By the time they realized it, the storm had already arrived, and there was nowhere left to hide. The saddest part is that the truth never left them. It just waited. It waited through every compromise, every lie they told themselves, every time they chose comfort over conscience. And when it finally broke through, it wasn't gentle. It came with consequences. Because that's how the soul works. If you won't listen to the whisper, it will let the world scream it at you. Their downfall wasn't fate or bad luck. It was self-inflicted silence. They muted the one voice that could have saved them, their own. And when you betray your inner voice long enough, life has no choice but to teach you the hard way what your intuition was trying to tell you all along. Number 12. They wanted a Messiah but chose a madman. It wasn't ignorance. It was convenience. A real savior forces change, demands growth, and exposes everything you've been hiding from yourself. But a fraud lets you stay the same. He tells you you're right even when you're wrong, chosen even when you're corrupt, enlightened even when you're lost. That's why they followed him, not because they believed in him, but because he made self-deception comfortable. They didn't want salvation, they wanted validation. A true Messiah holds up a mirror, while a madman paints a portrait, one that flatters, not confronts. He tells you your weakness is strength and your fear is faith. And people love that. It's easier to kneel before a lie than stand in the truth. The madman didn't hypnotize them. He simply catered to their hunger for illusion. Every cult, every mob, every manipulated crowd begins with the same craving. To be told they're right without having to change. When the facade began to crack, they didn't just lose a leader. They lost their favorite lie. His downfall wasn't just the end of a man. It was the end of their comfort zone. Suddenly, the excuse was gone. They could no longer point and say, "He led us astray," because the truth was, they followed willingly. The madman was just the reflection of their own refusal to evolve. That's the real tragedy. They didn't worship him because he was divine, but because he was familiar. Because the truth was, they followed willingly. The madman was just the reflection of their own refusal to evolve. That's the real tragedy. But those words are just shields for pride, because deep down they know the red flags were waving like sirens, and they looked away. They saw the madness, the manipulation, the contradictions, and they followed anyway. The lunatic didn't cast a spell. He simply handed them a permission slip to stop thinking. Now, stripped of illusion, they can't handle the silence of their own mind. It's easier to rage than reflect. Blame becomes their new religion, and guilt their unspoken God.
Because someone that was claiming to be of God, you triggered some type of demon within them, or you even probably exposed this person in front of people that thought they were holy. And this person didn't like that you did that, but that person got so obsessed with you, they went against God. They're like, you know what? I'm gonna do this by myself since you don't want to help me out. And that was one of the worst things they could have ever done, because not only did they go against God, they teamed up with demons, because the demons was promising them that they can help that person get rid of you. And so they teamed up with the demons, and what they probably did was a smear campaign on you. Start lying on your name, start manipulating the scenes, trying their best to paint you as who they actually are. And you're seeing all these things play out, and you probably had the instinct of like, oh, I want to fight back. I want to defend myself. This isn't fair. Why did I fall for this again? But you didn't abandon God, because God gave you a message and told you, don't do it. Just sit back. I got you. They thought that they was driving you insane. You stayed calm. You sat back and you enjoyed the show, because what happened with that person, they found out that it was indeed not a joke, because bad things started happening not only to them, but to everyone that was involved in trying to take you down. Exiled. They probably started going through financial troubles, start going through like some of the worst things they could have went through imaginable in their life. And they found out that they probably should have like left you alone. Now, there's two paths this person could have taken. One, they found out the hard way that you should have just been left alone from the start. And that's what they did. They went and learned and evolved. But for a majority of you guys, that's not the case, because since they got their karma, and guys, don't try to understand their mental, it's gonna drive you insane just like them. But because they got their karma and what they did didn't have the intended result on you, now they're pissed off at you. Now they're looking at you like, why did you do this to me? And you're like, yo, this is crazy. Like, what do you mean? I was just to myself. And now they're trying to get revenge because what they did didn't work. And then God is just looking at them like, whoa, okay, they're not going to learn. And now they have to get their karma again. And not only do they get their karma, but God also blesses you in front of these people to show them that you're off limits. So ultimately, you don't like going through these situations, but you like the aftermath, because after that situation happened, it was stressful. Don't get me wrong, but because you stayed at peace and you stayed away from it, you started getting blessed in your life financially, whether it was in your career, whether it was more peacefulness within your mind. And you start to see that, oh, this is what I got to do in this reality, is just never get vengeance. And that's normally how you are naturally as a person. But now you're able to see that by not doing it, that's how you get blessed. So you guys have a lot of people out there at this moment mad that they got their karma and that you got blessed, because the demons promised them something different. But that doesn't work on people that is divinely protected.
Chosen one, they are battling for you. There is a real battle happening around your life, and it is not something your eyes can easily see, yet it is shaping everything ahead of you. This message means that unseen forces are aligning, decisions are being influenced, and hearts are being moved because of you. It is the result of the seeds you have planted through your character, your patience, and your silent endurance. While you thought nothing was happening, I was arranging conversations, opening doors, and allowing your name to rise in places where it matters. You have been underestimated, misunderstood, and sometimes even ignored. Yet none of that has stopped what I am doing for you. The trust someone holds for you is not based on perfection. It is based on something deeper, something they recognized in you that others missed. This is why things are shifting, and why you are about to notice changes that feel sudden but were prepared long ago. You have carried burdens quietly, and you have questioned whether your efforts were seen or valued. But I want you to understand that nothing you have done with sincerity has been wasted. Every act of patience, every moment you chose peace over reaction, every time you stayed true when it would have been easier to walk away, it all built something powerful around you. That is what created this trust that now surrounds you. A trust that is stronger than opinions and louder than doubts.
Day by day, and with each passing moment, strength I find to meet my trials near. Trusting in my Father's wise bestowment, I've no cause for worry or for fear. He whose heart is kind beyond the measure gives unto each day what he deems best. Lovingly, it's part of pain and pleasure, mingling toil with peace and rest. Every then, in every tribulation, so to trust thy promises, O Lord, that I lose not faith's sweet consolation, offered me within thy holy word. Help me, Lord, when toil and trouble meeting, ever to take as from a father's hand, one by one, the days, the moments fleeting, till I reach the promised land.
Thank you for joining us for Gnostic Five Senses Knowledge, Kings and Queens, Entertainment Education. Be blessed.